Loyal listeners, avid fans, welcome back. Thank you very much for tuning in to The Frying Pan, episode 6. We are over halfway to 10 episodes, so this is a fairly monumental occasion by all accounts. My name is Louis Rive, and editor of Talking Soup magazine. I'm broadcasting from southern Spain, in an area roughly between Cordoba and Seville. I'm joined, as always, by my trusted and loyal guest and friend, Rowan Kane. Rowan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well today, Louis. I am not an editor anymore. My former magazine is on hiatus, but I am a blogger at semawangstories.wordpress.com. And I am broadcasting today from a lovely garden in Sanur, which is part of Denpasar in Bali, which is in Indonesia.
Fantastic. And obviously for those listening to the online edition, you won't be able to see the glorious surroundings that Rowan finds himself in. Definitely better than mine, which at the moment I feel like I am enclosed in a marble coffin, which is my office here in Spain. Aircon is on full blast, temperatures are rising, yeah, it's going to be a fairly spicy podcast.
It looks something somewhere between a bathroom and a classroom. Yes, yeah.
It's definitely a classroom that when they designed it, they went for the public toilet theme as the prevailing theme of the design, and they've done an excellent job, I must say, of really bringing out the grime and soullessness of the public toilet. So. To whoever did the half-assed job that is this class, well done indeed.
What are we talking about today, Luke?
Today we're going to talk about sports. So this is the Sports Not Illustrated issue. We're going to go straight into it really. I'm obviously broadcasting from Spain, which many people will know is a country fairly well renowned for its sports. But Rowan is broadcasting from Indonesia, and the world of Indonesian sports seems to be as murky as it is misunderstood in the Western world. Rowan, can you cast a little bit of general light on what's even popular in Indonesia? What do people follow?
The two biggest are badminton, which has an N in there, which I didn't know about until relatively recently, and football, soccer. And I know very little about badminton. Except that it's in the Olympics and very popular in Asia. So we're going to move swiftly past that and onto football, which I know a considerable amount more about. I've actually written a couple articles about the situation in Indonesian football or soccer, depending on how you want to put it, for Vice Sports, and we'll have them in the show notes. But the short story is that. Over the past decade or so, Indonesian soccer has been completely undermined by corruption, by teams underperforming, by coaches being removed for political reasons, just a whole host of issues that I'd love to go more in depth if you so desire.
Well, I would absolutely desire. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of things there, sort of endemic corruption and sort of people losing games maybe on purpose, and that's an affliction that Europeans will not be strangers to, shall we say. The situation in Italy really is exactly the same as that. The one difference being Italy remain very, very good at football, whereas Indonesia, in fact, for such an avid football fan, I know literally nothing about Indonesian football. Straight up zero.
So it's the national team's called the Merah Putih, the red and white, or the Team Nasional, and so I'm just trying to find a good place to start because there's so much.
Good.
So let's start with the league. The league was supposed to start this year in February, and it has not started yet. So we'll go back. We'll go back from there. the government actually had to step in this year because the Football Federation, which is called the PSSI, is so corrupt that ridden with mafia figures that it took actual government intervention. And I'm butchering this right now, but let me start over. We can cut this again. So let's do another take on this, Lou. All right.
Okay, no problem. I come in whenever you want. I've got a good question. The question's fine. Whenever you want, go for it.
All right. Shoot the question.
The question. What was the question again? About Italy. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'll come in with the question, or you can go straight ahead and answer. But either way, what do you want to do? Do you want to answer it?
Yep. Yeah, come with the question again, because I forgot it to begin with. That was my issue.
No worries. Okay. So, Rowan, you spoke about endemic corruption and the possibility that teams might be losing on purpose, which is one of the few things that is quite familiar to a European audience, being as we are burdened with the Italians in our leagues. And certainly corruption is a big issue there. The one difference seems to be that Italy remain very good at football, and Indonesia, though I don't wish to sort of spread any spurious conjecture, have not graced the world stage at the highest level as of yet, I don't think. So why, if the problems are the same, why what is the difference there in Indonesia?
So the problems, I think, are much more widespread in Indonesia. I'm going to start with the situation of the Merah Putih, which is the national team. They're ranked around 150th in the world, give or take a couple rankings. But their big issue is that they're now sanctioned from FIFA and are unable to play in international competitions. Now, the reason they're sanctioned in FIFA, is because of endemic corruption within the Football Association of Indonesia, which is called the PSSI. The biggest, the match fixing scandals that have come across here aren't so much to do with the teams themselves, although there are some allegations of that. It's with the referees, and it's not very well hidden either. So there will be lots of cards or very few cards, lots of penalties or no penalties when there should be a penalty. And so the football is its own mafia. The head of the football is its own mafia. And it's one of the few mafias in Indonesia, and the Indonesians use the term mafia that is intertwined with politics. And so the referees have their own mafia, which is separate somewhat from the hierarchy of the football of the PSSI of the Football Association. But yeah, so it's very, and that's been part of the issue. And the government's had to step in this year. The league was supposed to start in February, and it still hasn't started yet because because the government stepped in. And so there are political factions within the PSSI, political factions that are rivaling the current government. So there's a lot of teams, I guess, a lot of factions and a lot of fingers in the pot.
Yeah, you've got a lot of very dirty fingers in one sort of a very dirty, low-ranked pie.
Yeah.
Franchise corruption. Well, it's all. It sounds very exciting. You have recently, I read one of Rowan's articles for Vice Sports, where he went on the most magical of all things to do with football, the away day with the lads. You'll forgive me, I cannot remember the exact fixture that you saw. What I wanted to ask you was, well, first, please tell us what the exact fixture was. And also, what was the standard like in terms of something we can relate to here in Europe?
Yeah. So that was actually, I think I sent you a pre-draft of an article that hasn't actually come out yet. So that's going to be coming out in an American magazine sometime this fall or winter, I think. Still in the editing process, still going through. So that's exciting.
Great.
The trip I went on, and we'll plug this later. I'll certainly plug it later when it comes out. But the trip I went on was with a group of they call themselves Semeton de Wata, which is a Balinese term, and they are the fans of the local team, Bali United, which was set to play its inaugural season this year in the Indonesian Super League, as it was formerly called. It's now called the Qatar National Bank League. So if you want to interject some sort of comment about corruption, worldwide corruption, there, please feel free. So they're supposed to start their Bali United is supposed to have their first year in the Indonesian Premier League this year, Indonesian Super League this year. But unfortunately, as I said, the government stepped in, canceled the league, froze the PSSI, the Football Association, and so the league hasn't started. So what these teams have been doing to literally pay their players has been going around and playing friendlies and playing exhibition matches. Yeah. And so I went with this group of Semeton de Wata, the supporters, and they take the name supporter very seriously, to meet with two other supporters groups, one called the Bonek, which are a team from Surabaya, or the supporters of a team from Surabaya. That's a whole nother story, which would take a podcast in itself. Basically, there are two teams in Surabaya that are mirror images of each other, controlled by two different political factions that don't like each other, and the supporters are behind one, but not behind the other. So so we met with the supporters that are behind the what they say is the real team. Met with them, went to an exhibition match in Surabaya, and then went to see Bali United play a friendly against another team who is Surabaya's biggest rival. They're called Arema, and they're from the city of Malang. And their teams, or their supporters' motto is halal atau haram, menang lebih penting, which means halal or haram, which is the Muslim kind of, it's like kosher, being kosher or not being kosher. It's good. Halal is good, and haram is bad or unclean. Winning is most important, and they are in favor of the status quo, which includes match fixing, includes bribing referees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's always easier to win that way.
Yeah. And what the big interesting, the most interesting point that I saw between the two cities was in Surabaya. They're very revolutionary, very for the government intervention. They want to kick out all the corruption in the FA. And then so there's anti-FA signs everywhere, and they've got like the Guy Fawkes mask. They look like V for Vendetta all over the place. And then in Malang, there wasn't a mention of anything. It was all kind of clean. We just want to play football. We just want to we just want to keep things going. So it was a really interesting contrast between the two. As in terms of play, it's very direct. The Indonesians have a tendency to kind of put their head down and run straight forward with the ball, and try and play very quickly through the middle. The game that I saw, the Bali United against Arema match that I saw, was 1-0, and Bali United scored in the 93rd minute. So very poor defending, very poor finishing, somewhat decent ball control, but yeah, I mean it's what you would expect from teams that had been practicing for 6 months and hadn't played a full match.
Haven't kicked a ball in anger, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I gave you a lot to digest there. I apologize though.
No. It's very interesting. Obviously, we know nothing about Asian football. The thing that strikes me the most about Asian football is why Asian teams, and I don't mean to sort of heavily generalize here, but most of the Asian countries are very heavily populated, and I never understand why countries like Indonesia or anywhere around there cannot find 11 people in their population that could play international football to a high level. And people say that this has never been done in Asia, but it has, because South Korea and Japan have both they're sort of pretty reliable actually in terms of world prestige, whereas sort of Southeast Asia, especially places like Indonesia and India, with 1 billion people, you'd expect 11 of them to be good enough. I mean, obviously, you must know about my previous attempts to try and play for Sri Lanka internationally.
I have not heard about this.
Ah, really? Well, I qualify for Sri Lanka through FIFA regulations because of my grandmother's place of birth, and I've been. As you know, I'm a fairly skilled goalkeeper, and I thought I could certainly lend my talents to the Sri Lankan national team, who I do follow vaguely. They are currently, I think, 186th in the world, which is maybe 4 off the bottom. They really never win, and they've yet to get back to me. I've emailed them many times, but it's almost like they don't take my candidature seriously. Yeah. The average height of a Sri Lankan, I believe, is 5'4", I think 5'5", very quite small. So to go in goals, I would at least provide the sort of height at the back, which is essential. But they just didn't seem interested at all. But it's something that's always amazed me that the sort of Southeast Asian teams are quite so bad. Which brings me on to my next point, actually. Many of these countries, they do have a sport that is very popular, like cricket, for example, or, well, no, in all these countries, it's cricket. Does Indonesia have any kind of non-Western sports? Do you have a traditional sport in Indonesia?
Not that is like widely popular that I've actually noticed. So, I mean, I've been here for 6 months, so if I would have noticed if a sport was widely popular that isn't. So, but it's badminton and then football. People here are crazy about football, and I would say football takes precedence over badminton. So it's to kind of respond to why Indonesia isn't good at football. It's lack of coaching, lack of funding. All the funding gets kind of put into the pockets of the owners and the pockets of people that kind of down the line. So there's not a lot of good pitches here. The youth teams, the youth setup is inadequate. I mean, I think if there's a point where coaching actually really matters, and it's probably around 15 or 16, where you can 15 or 16-year-olds anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world can play each other, and it would be, depending on kind of like where you're playing and the conditions, it would be a pretty even match. But after 14, 15, 16, that's when coaching really starts to matter. That's when you really need some sort of structure, some sort of strategy. And Indonesia just doesn't have it. Just doesn't have it. So Lou, I'm interested, flipping it back on you. What is the sporting situation like in the frying pan?
In the frying pan, the sporting situation is, well, there's a fairly rich vein of sport running through Andalusia, obviously, with La Liga, which thankfully starts next week, which will certainly make my life a little less boring overall. Yeah. So I'm very much looking forward to that, especially this weekend, because I will be traveling to Madrid to see the opening day's game of Atletico Madrid versus Las Palmas, the newly promoted team from the Canary Islands. So I will certainly feed back from that in the podcast in the future. But I have been to a couple of La Liga games, and they are fantastic. La Liga is incredibly popular in Spain, and there is not really any sport that comes that close to it, except for, well, actually no. Spain is a sporting nation that is fairly alien to me, coming from Scotland, in that they excel in many things. almost everything they seem to put their mind to. There is actually a world champion in all sort of major sports, bar kind of rugby. But if you talk about football, golf, tennis, Formula One as well, I believe they have a real pantheon of sporting achievement. The Spanish do, and if you see the weather here, you would understand. There's really no time. The weather is always sunny, so as long as it's not the middle of the day, you can train anytime you want. In Andalusia, I am near enough to Seville to mean that the two Seville teams are the sort of most popular in the area. Because I'm in the back end of nowhere, the countryside team is Real Betis. They are more popular in the sticks, shall we say? Seville are the kind of city boys team, the sort of posh team. So Real Betis have been promoted this year. They went up as champions. So there is a Seville derby. In terms of Andalusia in general, there is lots of teams in Andalusia. None of them are particularly good, and they play a yo-yo game of maybe 2 or 3 go down, and 3 will come up. Locally, Betis is the big team. We also do in this tiny hamlet. There is a league team. It's one of the things that this town does have is a stadium, which pretty much sums up how popular football is in Spain, because this town has about 5,000 people.
What's the seating capacity of the stadium? At the stadium?
There's only one stand. And then 3 standing areas. I think if you really pushed it, you could get 1,000 people in there.
Okay, not bad.
So it's by no means small, actually. It's by no means small. And La Campana Balompié, as they are called, I believe, play in the 8th tier of Spanish football. So if you go Real Madrid -8, you will find it's either 7 or 8. I think they were promoted last year, so I think 7 this year. And it's only onwards and upwards from here, really. So we'll see.
Well, you've just given away where you live. You've the cat's out of the bag now.
I know.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
it's there.
Have you been able to play anything? Have you been stretching your goalkeeper limbs at all since you've been there, or has the opportunity not arisen?
I've yet to. I made a conscious decision after moving to London when I played one Sunday league match, a match that we were beaten 10-1. I made a decision in my mind, certainly, if not, a physical decision, that I would never ever play a game of competitive football 11-a-side like that again. It was the 10th goal when they scored directly from a corner that I let go. Sort of nestled itself in the top corner beautifully. I also picked up a pass back as well from the resulting indirect free kick they scored from, and I thought, you know what? I'm done now. That's me done. I've put my hat in the ring. I've spoken to some people. I said, if there's ever a massive injury crisis, I'm here for you. But until that day comes, I will be the spectator. They have a very good bar in the stadium, so that's fine for me at the moment.
What was your expat experience of the week? We should probably start wrapping this up.
Yeah, absolutely. My expat experience of the week, it's a bit of a dull one, to be honest, but something that really doesn't ever happen in the UK was somebody yesterday gave me a sack of lemons, and I mean like a sack. I'm pretty kind of I don't know, cosmopolitan in the way that I've grown up, and I've never grown up in the countryside or anything like that. But yesterday, a man came to my door. He was quite drunk as well, so it was a bit strange. But he asked me, "Do you have lemons?" And I said, "No, I don't have any lemons. I don't use lemons for fucking anything. Like, they are pretty useless fruits. I don't know what. Yeah, I have none." And he said, "Do you want some lemons?" I said, "No." absolutely not. And he said they're free, and that's when like the Scottish thing kicked in a little bit. And he said, "Give me a second." Went down to his house, and he brought me a sack, and I mean like a full bin bag of, I'd say close to 100 lemons, which are of prodigious size here in southern Spain. So I have this like incredible amount of lemons, which I have juiced some of them. The juice of which is obviously undrinkable because it's so sour. And despite giving my house a very fragrant odor, it is definitely an inconvenience. That is my story.
I love lemons, and I would certainly make lemonade out of a bag full of lemons, and maybe sell it on the street. Maybe you should set up a table in front of your house and sell some lemonade, and make a couple euro that you can drink later in the day. Yeah,
perhaps, yeah.
50 cents for a cup of lemonade.
We could see how it goes, though. The lemons grow on trees here, so I mean there would be no real reason for anyone not to kind of do it themselves. But yeah, that was yesterday's experience. I have a lot of experiences where like drunk older guys give me unwieldy gifts, which
doesn't sound dirty at all.
No, it's something that's afflicted me my entire life, really, not just here. But we'll go into it more on another podcast, I think.
Yeah.
What about you, Ron? What happened this week?
Not a whole lot, but yesterday I went to a protest about a development that's going on that's supposed to be being built. They're trying to the unnamed they are trying to build the man are trying to build a few islands in a big bay that take out a bunch of mangrove swamp, take out a bunch of estuary, and build an island on which they'll put villas, hotels, a golf course, and maybe even an F1 track.
Wow.
So there was a protest about that. That's an ongoing issue. It's been going on for like 3 or 4 years now. And it's potentially coming to a head in next couple months. So hopefully you'll see an article about that for me in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, the one thing that Indonesia probably doesn't need is more islands. So just on a purely sort of practical point, I would say that's a bad idea. I know nothing about the history, but if a country, an archipelago is made up of so many islands, more is unnecessary.
Yeah,
more is unnecessary.
Yeah, the idea with the problem with this is, the big problem with this, besides like tearing up a bunch of mangrove swamp and creating islands when there's already 17,000, is the fact that it's like right at the edge of the it's right where all the water from the city comes out. So it's pretty dirty to begin with, but also like if you just put land there, everything else behind it's going to flood, which the whole city is going to flood basically if this goes forward. So it'll be interesting. And probably in the typical Indonesian way, it'll start and then 3 months later, construction will stop and it won't be finished. So
yeah, they do that all the time here too. That's fine. I understand that
hence
method.
The pile of bricks. Hence the pile of bricks from the last episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for today. I think we've probably overrun a little bit, but we can hope you enjoyed it.
It's always a pleasure, Ron. It's always a pleasure. And for all of you out there that tuned in by whatever method that you chose, thank you very much for tuning in. If you want to follow the podcast, you can follow me, Louis Rive, at my magazine, www.talkingsoup.com, or at Talking Soup Magazine. If you are a Twitterer, I believe is the name. A tweeter. There we go. Tweeter. Yeah, sorry. And Rowan, how do they get in touch with you?
At my blog, semolongstories.wordpress.com, or on Twitter, which I don't really use very much, but you can message me on it and I'll get it. Tweet at me at RLMKane with a K. Good talking to you this week, Lou.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk about sport. Good luck with the mangrove swamp, and we will talk again next week.
Cheers. Good luck with the lemons.
Yeah, we'll see how things go. For everybody else, tune in next week for episode 7 of The Frying Pan. Until then, I'll say goodbye, Rowan.
Goodbye, Lou.
See you later, guys.